Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Hello, friends and viewers and wonderful historians of the 1950s. Jack and I love the 1950s, and that's why we have this channel, the 1950s Fun Chat. And believe it or not, Jackie, this is number 179. So for 179 weeks, we've been interviewing people about their stories from the 1950s. Hasn't it been fun?
Yes, we've learned so much. We learn more than we thought we ever wanted to know about so many different topics. So exactly. We'll get on with our show. But first of all, viewers, please look at the bottom. You see the purple banner and a website in white font, www.whilethewindmillwatch.com. Please go there for all sorts of information about the authors, the book, the vendors, and past 1950s fun chats. So the book is right up there in the corner, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s. So check out where you may be able to find that for your personal copy. And so we begin. Our fun chat guest has always loved to learn, and he has taken that love of learning into all areas of his life, but especially music and two specific types of agriculture. Born in 1939 in Fort Dodge, Iowa, Ron Stone is going to tell us about some of those areas. Now, Ron was raised in north central Iowa near Luverne. He graduated from high school there, and then he earned a degree in agricultural business from Iowa State University. He spent 6 years in the National Guard. So Ron spent 29 years counseling farmers in business analysis and tax, while continuing to operate the family farm near Luverne. Ron and his first wife were married during the 1960s, and they raised 3 daughters. She passed away in 1991. He and his present wife, Kathy, were married in 2013. She had 3 grown children, which resulted in a blended family of 6 children, 16 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. Ron and Kathy live in Ankeny, Iowa. So, Ron, we do welcome you to the 1950s Fun Chat. Mm-hmm. So, since music has been one of the influences in your life, let's begin with that topic, and then we'll move on to agriculture. So, how was your love of music fostered, and can you recall any specific influences during the 1950s?
Absolutely. My mother played the piano almost every day. I think when I was very, very young, I learned pitch. Mm-hmm. I learned how to sing. It was just a huge part of my life. And then in high school, I wasn't much for sports. I was mainly music and science, chemistry, and so a lot of contest numbers. But then now I've continued with the music. I love it. And so singing, I wished I would have taken my mother's advice. She wanted to teach me how to play the piano, but I didn't think it was a really fabulous thing for a boy to do piano from his mother.
So now you play.
So I refused, and I should never have done that. And so a little more on music now. Do you want to hear about that?
Well, yes. And do you play any instruments now? And tell us how music has influenced your life, even though you didn't learn to play the piano.
Okay. Well, I sang in various choruses in Des Moines. Did solos in church. Spiritual music is a big part of my life. And actually, in my first job out of college, which was in Atlantic, Iowa, with Walnut Grove products there. The gentleman that had the music store was named Rex Peer, and he was quite a musician. He had played with Benny Goodman and some really famous people. And I had this guitar, and it was not the best guitar in the world. And Rex let me trade that guitar for a better guitar from his music store in España. And so, but that didn't materialize too much. But then I've taken up mountain dulcimer playing.
Oh,
and I love that, and I love to sing, and I can even play and sing. And some of those are spiritual numbers, but some are just fun things. So
Ron,
music is a huge part of my life.
Ron, did you have lessons on the mountain dulcimer, or learned as you went?
Yes, I've had 5 years of lessons. A gentleman in church has taught Kathy and I and several others free for 5 years, which is a wonderful thing, and then has given us music. So we're really enjoying that. I'm the slowest one now. These other women are faster now. I mean,
How did you happen to choose that instrument?
well, a gentleman in church said, you know, when you're 20 years old, you can look at a guitar, clear out here the strings and see them perfectly. But as you age, like somebody from the back there where we're talking, 1939, your eyes don't work so perfectly out there, but the mountain dulcimer lays right on your lap, and it has 3 strings, and you can see them beautifully.
So very valuable as we age.
Yes.
That influenced you, and you said, "I can do this."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Ron, in music, do you see music tying in at all with a career in agriculture? How do the two mix?
Well, many of the people that I worked with when I worked with the Iowa Farm Business Association, I had first 180 clients helping farmers with their records and taxes. And one thing I noticed, you know, when you go into someone's home, and we always visited in the home, you get to know, do they go to church? Do they have a piano? And it was kind of a talking point when I found someone that was musically inclined. That was fabulous. I mean, if we had 5 minutes, I may have them play the piano or maybe sing with them for just 5 minutes or so.
Did you ever take your dulcimer to people's homes? Or maybe you picked up the dulcimer after you had that position?
We did. Our group went to a nursing home in Ankeny and assisted living in Madrid also. And yes, I've played when someone comes to visit our home, I usually show them. I can teach them in about 20 minutes. Now, not fast. They're not going to be playing fast, but they can play Amazing Grace.
Okay.
With
I
20
want to
minutes,
come to your home.
with only 20 minutes of instruction.
Oh, there you go, Janine.
Yes, yes. My next thing to do.
Yeah. Okay. So then we talked a bit about your job. So tell us about your 29-year career in counseling farmers and within taxes, and maybe some of the major problems, or not even say problems, hurdles that you needed to overcome, or the farmers needed to overcome.
Right. Well, I think tax management is all very, very important. And if you can teach a farmer how to save $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 worth of taxes, they listen up very much. I think farming used to be if you worked hard, if you knew how to run a scoop shovel and worked hard and diligently, you would be successful. Well, then the 1980s came along.
Yes.
And that was called the farm crisis. And interest rates were 14%. And corn, I believe, was down to something like $1.63. Many farmers had expanded when interest rates were lower and crop prices were better. So that was a very tough time. So I helped my people through that. One thing that I feel really pleased that I did, and I could have been wrong, but I felt that owning land was so unbelievably important. They would always tell me, oh, I don't want to rent or I don't want to buy any land because I can rent all of this and then I don't have to make those huge payments. But one of the things that seemed very, very important to me, there were two parts of buying land. One, you made the payments, and if you could make the payments, that was wonderful. But there was a second thing. You not only had the cash flow that you were paying for the land, but you had forever control. And that is so unbelievably important. And so the people that understood those and acquired land, so I have 150 lifetime friends the I could have been wrong. I mean, land could have been a bad thing. So, but helping them through those terrible years of the farm crisis of the 1980s, I would come home at night and I would be totally worn out from the stress that was causing on my people.
Yes. Well, Ron, what led you then into this type of work and counseling farmers? What's the backstory on your life in agriculture?
Sure. Well, my first job out of college was with Walnut Grove Products in Atlantic as a finance manager. I would handle all the bad checks that everybody gave, and I would work on collecting those. And I joined the Atlantic JCs, and the JCs were a wonderful, fabulous organization. We did things for the community. We did things outside of the community. And one of the things they had was the Outstanding Young Farmer Contest. And I thought, oh my gosh, they were always looking for people to do various projects. And I thought, I will do that. So we interviewed, we looked at the records, we worked with all the applicants, and the one I picked had a records service called the Iowa Farm Business Association. And that gentleman knew his costs. He knew what it took to produce a bushel of corn and a pound of beef and a ton of alfalfa. And he was in community affairs, and that gentleman won. But I looked at his records and I said, how did you do this? How did you know what all these things were? And he said, I was a member of the Farm Business Association. And the gentleman that was heading that in that area, I got to know, and I talked to him. And then I found out that a job over in the Ankeny, Des Moines area was open. So that's how I got into, and I love to help people doing things. The Lord has allowed me to farm in 4 counties. I operate it all myself. I hire a bunch of big machines, but I do all the sweat labor. And so for me to be healthy at, I'm afraid to tell you, 85, farm in 4 counties and still do the use a backpack sprayer to get the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
The big commercials have lost. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can give back to the Lord by giving to people, whether it's the church, the community. Yes.
So, well, go ahead, Janine.
Well, I was going to lead into the statement you said, I love giving back to people. Can you tell us where you are right now in your horticulture experience and how you give back to people?
Well, yes. For about 10 years, I have been growing pumpkins on my Polk City farm. It's kind of neat there because it has a tile that runs water. And all of you know that water is expensive in today's world. So I have water there. And I began to grow pumpkins and then giving just a few away at the church parking lot in Slater. And it has grown over 10 years. So I think we were up to about 4,000 last year. We had a mob of people. We had hundreds of people come. They were all free.
Mm-hmm.
I have not sold a pumpkin yet in my entire life, and I don't intend to. So I would love to grow these pumpkins, probably 15 different kinds, and they go.
Have you developed a pumpkin breed?
I'm sorry?
Have you developed a pumpkin breed?
Yes. Well, pumpkins are not self-pollinating like beans. They're cross-pollinating, but if you keep it away from everything else, yes. My daughter is an artist, and she told me that deep, dark orange pumpkins were very, very superior. Smooth skins, so children can draw on them, and squatty. So I have developed my own strain of very deep, dark orange, squatty, smooth skinned pumpkins. Yes, they're my very own. And I replant them every year. But we had a problem last year. I ordered some big moose pumpkins, and they had a white strip in them. Evidently, the bees pollen from these big moose pumpkins and polluted my genetics.
Oh, no.
So I am.
Well, they just created a new one for you.
Well, yes, it was peach colored.
Oh.
And those were gone. We gave away pumpkins for 4 or 5 hours, but I thought the peach colored ones would be a failure. But my daughter said, oh, peach, they were gone in the first hour.
So are they still squatty and smooth skinned?
Yes.
Or with just different colors?
Just peach. It polluted the color.
So can you say that God sent that bee?
Probably.
Maybe more than one bee.
Yeah.
Right. But giving away, or whether it's to the church, I praise the Lord every day for health. I work with so many farmers that, the 180 and then later years cut it down to 135. But when they quit and stop getting exercise and stop eating right and stop, that is things go to pieces too quickly. So I think that is something that I encourage everybody that's in farming to do. Is they need a lot of hobbies and a lot of things like that after they, you might say, turn in the plow.
Okay. So what about farming captured your soul? What can you say to that?
I love to grow things. About as soon as I would walk, my mother was very interested in growing flowers. She had gladiolas by the hundreds. I would be out there, and she would teach me, and I would plant seeds very, very young. Probably I would think possibly even before age 5. So I love to work with the soil, get my hands in the soil, watch things grow, and fight the weeds.
Yes, that's right.
So, speaking of that, how have you kept up with the changes in agriculture? And maybe it might have to do with those weeds.
Oh, yes. Well, herbicides came out probably about the time I was took the first job at Walnut Grove, and I was still running the farm all that time. But herbicides, you can use so many herbicides that you can kill everything. The ground can be totally black. You can have the weeds killed, the crop killed, and then recently we've had foods that have been polluted. So I think I have constantly spent a lot of time hand weeding, but my latest exciting thing to think about is really cutting edge, brand new, but it's really thousands of years old. And so the very newest thing is you prevent seed production, or you destroy and grind up the seed somehow, or you use cover crops to choke out the weeds without any poisons. So I think there is going to be more of this, because if you have an 80-acre field that's perfect in the beans and has no water hemp weeds in it, but you leave 2 in the fence row, those 2 can have 200,000 seeds apiece. And it would pay you to pay somebody $100 a piece to go out there and get a contractor bag from Menards and stuff those babies in there and get them off of your land.
So are there pre-emergents that can be used safely, or is that too a herbicide?
That's also, we really need pre-emergence to keep the weeds from ever sprouting. That is used in a lot of things, vegetable production. But I think the world is trending. Herbicides work for a little while. If you have thousands of weeds, but if you have one surviving weed and that weed multiplies, he makes, or she, whichever, makes more of those resistant weeds. So it's only a matter of time that every one of these herbicides just becomes worthless. Some have lasted much longer, but it's almost impossible to farm hundreds of acres without herbicides, because you just kill yourself trying to, pull them all out.
It's herbal cancer.
But you can. There are many. I am a member of the Practical Farmers of Iowa, and many of these farmers now have gone back to cultivation and flame throwing. But I love farming and controlling the weeds. I hand control the weeds in all my pumpkin patches now. But I'm getting older and more,
I guess,
whatever happens. Running the hole isn't quite as much fun as it was. But then I get volunteers. Because it's all for the Lord. It's giving back to the community. So I have volunteers that come now.
Well, that's cool.
But I love growing things. I love the land, the soil, the organic matter in the soil, taking care of the soil, increasing the organic matter. If you increase the organic matter a very tiny amount, it will hold more water. And every year in Iowa, it stops raining a little bit. And if you have a soil that holds more, you can go to the bank.
Yes. Ron, when you were little, growing up on your parents' farm, were there livestock on the farm as well?
Yes. Yes. We had lots of, not huge numbers. We had sheep, we had cattle, we had hogs, but then we had guineas also.
Oh, really?
Fertilizer producers, huh?
If someone would drive into the yard, those guineas would squawk and fly up to the top of the barn. They were fabulous watchdogs. Yes, all sorts. And then I was in 4-H. I remember a crazy thing when I was showing my calf at the fair. She stepped on my foot. That did hurt.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
I was standing there with but crops were really in 4-H, we had a corn contest where we were given a quarter of a bushel of feaster corn. And I took that and I planted that and won that contest, and my dad was pleased. And back in those years, the parents didn't interact with the children so much. When he said he was pleased that I won, I think that gave my farming a huge, colossal boost.
Yes, yes. Ron, I from experience of friends of yours and friends of mine, they have brought back to their residence a number of different pumpkins that you have grown, and each one has a different appearance to it. Can you tell us about some of those pumpkins? They're just unique in their makeup.
Yes. Well, one of the neatest ones, which can go to, let's say, a teacher or someone like an assisted living can take several and then hand them out at those places. But Casperita is a very small white one, about that big. And it is a very pure white that stays white for months and months and does not yellow. And those are gorgeous, beautiful. And then we have some with warts, great big warts. Some that are for winter luxury, is very meaty and makes wonderful pies. A lady that picked some of those up last year stopped me in Menards and said her bars were the unbelievable that she had made from those. So I really have to have, and mid-sized, I only have the one white because I don't want the other colors to influence my genetics. So I have 4 different patches. So I can plant some of them. There's Turk's turban, which looks like a turban up here. That's very, very popular. The mid-sized people, women especially, when they get a pumpkin, they do not like to take a hunking big pumpkin this big and put it on their dining room table. They like a pumpkin that's just about like this. So we had Jack of Hearts, we had Gumdrop, PMR, we had Pipsqueak. Pipsqueak was very interesting because the stem would curl. People like that, but those were all mid-sized orange. And then we had the French love to have great, gigantic, heavy pumpkins that they keep a long time and have for food in the wintertime. So I had 3 French varieties, Rouge d'Antampus, which was a bright red, a blue with warts, and then kind of a rust colored, but these weighed 20 to 25 pounds, and you could make out of one of these French pumpkins I would imagine you could probably make 10, at least 10 pies or breads or, but the French, these were 3 French Fridays and I will grow those again.
Hmm.
So yes, people they all have different wants. So it was unbelievably exciting to see the hundreds of people come and like mob. Or the kids wanted the very largest one. They did not want anything other than the very, very largest one. They couldn't carry it. They had to have assistance to get it to the car.
Yeah. So do you have wagons throughout the patches so they could put them on wagon?
No. We have 40 people, volunteers that come out in 10 trucks.
Carry them.
And we pick them all. Then we haul them to the church parking lot. Then we give them away there. And then we have volunteers that help the children carry the big ones too.
I see. Okay.
Are you planting the pumpkins so that they all mature at the same time then?
That's a problem because, yes, some are mature in 70 days and the longest is 125 days. It does not work to plant pumpkins too early because what happens is when the seedling first emerges and if a cucumber beetle or a squash bug takes one bite out of that leaf that's as little as it's tiny, that plant will never amount to anything. So it is very helpful to kind of forget some of the maturities and plant them all the same time so you can watch, you can be right on top because it's like a child. When a child is first born, they have to be protected from everything. So when a plant first emerges, it has to be protected absolutely, or it will never amount to much. So I try to plant them all almost the same time. And then when it stops raining, the watering. So, and I planted rye, which is in the winter is this high. Next spring will be as high as my waist. I will flatten it and it will make about a ½ an inch thick mat of straw to keep these pumpkins all clean.
Oh, yes.
Then it will suppress weeds. So there's quite a bit of science there. And those are called cover crops. Plant rye in the fall. And I do that. I do that on 3 of my 4 farms, and I have for 10 years. Because when you have soil covered the whole year, it affects water quality, soil loss. When the rain falls, it soaks in where it falls. It doesn't run off. So that is a big thing as far as keeping soil and phosphorus and fertilizer from going into the Mississippi and going down into the dead zone in the Gulf. So cover crops are very important.
And you chose rye as a cover crop because of the straw it produces or because of the inexpense of it or why?
The inexpense of it, it is very tough. Oats, if you plant that in the fall, it will winter kill. Rye, if you plant that in the fall and get it to germinate, even though it's only 1/4 of an inch high, it will live through below zero winter and be already with some warm, sunshiny days, 50 degrees in March, in February, it will be growing roots. So it's like dandelions. Dandelions form a rosette the first year. The next spring, they explode. Just about 4 days. So the rye is like that. It does all this preparation over the winter and in the fall, and in the spring, it almost explodes to be restored.
Have you worked with other types of horticultural plants other than the pumpkins?
Yes, I have had all sorts of animal problems at my Oak City farm. So I've erected a fence. So I love to grow beets. Beets are unbelievably healthy. There are two groups of people out there. They love beets or they hate beets. There is nothing in the middle.
Yeah.
So beets, green beans, filial, the French, narrow, long green beans. I love those. I grow some ornamental corn. I'm trying to teach my daughters how to garden. So I let them have a plot. I'm telling them about weeds, but I have to tell them something very, very important. A very tiny weed that doesn't look like it's a problem does become a very large weed. So young people, that's a teaching event. I did take help two girls of family that was in our church and spent 3 years teaching them how to plant things. And I got the best thing back because when Ava, one of the girls, said, when I get married someday, I can take all these things you've taught me and have my home garden. So that made my day. That made 3 years I spent with them worth it all.
All right. So tell us about your relationship with oak trees.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
There are trees that grow fast and plug the eave troughs of houses, that break off in storms, that are just, they grow fast. But then there are slow growing trees, oaks, sugar maples, hackberries, redbuds, gorgeous, beautiful trees that are much, much slower. And I became interested in these. I planted some acorns and some that I had collected. And then I also ordered many pencil-sized trees from a nursery. And so I planted about 750 oaks, about 10 different kinds.
My.
But I planted them all in groves, like the scarlet oaks would be in a grove of scarlet oaks, because they liked a slope that was to the northeast, so they didn't dry out from drying winter winds, or the sugar maples, where they could view the unbelievable foliage kind of in a group. So all these in groups, and I loved watching them grow. I planted trees that were pencil-sized bare root. But if I was to do the project again for the 750 trees, and they were all random spaced, no rows. They're all randomly spaced. I threw a tennis ball out, and that's where the trees were.
Cool. More natural.
Yes, but I learned something very, very valuable. You can take a tree that is 3 feet high and plant it, a bare root tree, or you can plant an acorn. And usually if you have soybeans the previous year, to make sure the soil is nice and fluffy, but you plant that acorn and then you wait 10 or 12 years. The acorn tree will be above the bare root tree that was 3 feet high to start with, because when an acorn sends down the first root, it goes 8 to 12 inches before the top growth is even 1 inch. And when you buy trees that have been the roots cut off, they have a long period of doing almost nothing. So that's a valuable lesson.
Good.
750. I gave away probably 100 free as they became about 2 inches or so in diameter.
Wow, what an interesting past you have and continue to have in the area of growing and stewarding land and crops. And Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We're at the end of our time for our broadcast, but boy, have we learned a lot.
Yes, we
Not
have.
just not just about the 1950s, but even now. Thank you for being such a wonderful teacher, Ron.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for having me do this.
Oh,
You are
our
welcome.
pleasure. Our
And
pleasure.
I hope some people knew I was going to do this, and they've already asked how they can see it. So I should be scared here.
We'll
Me
give you
tell
the,
you.
yes, we'll give you the information as soon as we hang up here.
Thank you.
Yes. Jackie, how can you close our program today?
I would like to say thank you for tuning in and tell your friends, even your relatives, about the 1950s Fun Chat. Till next time, toodaloo.
Bye-bye.